term Santeria comes from the time of the Inquisition in Spain. Therefore, it becomes a colonial classification, if you will, an operational term imposed by the Catholic Church among all slaves that entered the island of Cuba during colonialism. Now, I'm not going to get into the whole Atlantic slave trade problem. I think we all have a good idea what that looks like. Certainly not worth discussing the Inquisition. Why worry about that? So we'll dismiss some of these things. Our faith comes from what is today known as Nigeria, among the Yoruba-speaking peoples of Nigeria. This is a group of hundreds of cultures that existed within what today is called Nigeria, that had a common language. When the Brits went into southern Nigeria and actually occupied it, it became, in the 1900s, it became a protectorate of the English crown. They codified the word Yoruba. This is not how the Yoruba people called themselves originally, but it's, thanks to the Brits, got branded as a Yoruba. It's actually a Hausa Fulani term from another culture. And when it came to Cuba during the slave trade, the Spaniards called it Santeria. Santeria basically refers to a person who, during the Inquisition, was Catholic. However, they were worshiping the Catholic saints in a way which was not exactly acceptable to the church standard at that point in time. But nevertheless, they were Catholics. Beyond those kinds of simplistic or superficial forms of worshiping or attributes to the different Catholic saints, then that was called witchcraft, brujeria. So you were either a witch or a santero. That transfers into the New World. That term, that operational term, gets codified by what? Western scientific theories, framework, sociologists, anthropologists, who were Catholic, who were white, who began the academy in Cuba, within that Western frame, continued to use that operational term. So suddenly, Cuba, who registered over 80 African cultures, imported over 80 African cultures from all over. It wasn't just Nigeria. Many came from the Congo. Everyone got thrown under this umbrella word, Santero or Santeria. Why? Not only was it their own operational term that made sense to them, but also because the legal entry to Cuba, what constituted legal entry to Cuba, was Catholic baptism. So they created their new world indeed. And in that creation of the new world, they placed all these cultures in a particular box. Anthropologists and sociologists, as early as 1906, began to document the Afro worldview, but under that cultural frame, that Western cultural frame. What they do is simple. No longer, slaves no longer had the right to their own cultures because they're slaves, therefore they get rehumanized. In order to rehumanize them, first you have to deculturalize them, to reculturalize them. In that process, you codify it. How? You're the one in power. It is your worldview being imposed on others. So we begin to name people according to what we want. Suddenly, what was African religious traditions, the many that were found in Cuba, are branded under this label of Santero or Santeria.